Hello everybody and welcome to the latest installment of the Podcasters of Horror, the spin-off podcast from the Super Podcast, of course right here at the Super Network at supermarcey.com. I am your wonderful, awesome host, Super Marcey, and with me as always is my trusty co-host, the one and only, the terrible Australian, Bede Jermyn. Hello Bede, how are you?
I'm good, thanks Marcey, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Just always busy and dealing with health and dealing with Australia's, or rather Melbourne's, ridiculous weather.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
It's either hot or it's raining or it's really humid and yeah, it doesn't know what it's doing. But yeah, surviving, strangely enough.
Yeah, it's pretty much been the same on my end as well, because I've sort of been busy as of late trying to fit in the last batch of movies I need to see before I can write my top 10 list for the year, which should be coming very soon. I'm almost done. Seen a few movies since the last recording, but I just need to watch just a tad few more and also rewatch a few as well, and then I can have it all written up and ready to go very soon.
Sounds good. There's definitely a lot of movies I need to catch up on that came out last year that I haven't seen yet, so hopefully I'll be doing that in the next few weeks, so fingers crossed as always.
Yes.
So, of course, Podcasters of Horror is our spin-off podcast, and at the moment we are going over the Masters of Horror TV series that went from
2005 to 2007?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll let you do that because I get my ears mixed up, as always. We are on the tail end of season 1 with our discussions. So for this episode, we are up to number 11, which is Pick Me Up, and number 12, which is Haeckel's Tale. And yeah, the next episode we do for podcasters we'll be finishing season 1, and then we'll be on to season 2. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I know, we're just almost getting into season 2, and definitely a lot of stuff in that season in particular that I'm really excited to talk about as well.
Yeah, and I know that our next episode will be interesting because that will contain the very controversial episode Imprint, and I haven't actually seen it, so that will be one I'm looking forward to. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier, we will be discussing Pick Me Up, which was directed by Cohen, and Haeckel's Tale, which was directed by John McNaughton. So we got some interesting 2 episodes to discuss. So we can get right to it. I will introduce Pick Me Up.
Gotcha! You're not done yet.
Y'all headed up anywhere near Lansdale?
We ain't headed nowhere right this minute.
I can take a few of these passengers up to the trading post.
So, what you carrying in the back?
Me.
I'm kind of worried about those people back on the bus.
Him and me were very different. He's kind of a poacher. He hitchhikes, and that makes him hard to track.
Can we offer you a ride?
He rides, I drive, he gets picked up. I do the picking up.
You offer me a ride?
That's the way it's supposed to go.
Only question is which one of you's the bigger psycho?
So, as I mentioned, that was directed by Cohen, who you might remember directed, I think it was Q, the Winged Serpent, and The Stuff.
Yep, and also It's Alive as well.
Yes, so Cohen definitely did a lot of movies, a lot of memorable movies, and
not only that, he also written some pretty interesting movies as well that he didn't direct, like Maniac Cop and as well as Phone Booth were some of the films that he's written but didn't direct.
Yeah, which are both pretty good movies, enjoyable in their own ways. So, with Pick Me Up, the quick summary of this episode is 2 serial killers, one who kills hitchhikers and another one who's a hitchhiker who kills anyone who gives him a ride. They end up clashing over their latest victim. So, bit of background for this one. It was written by David Show.
David J. Shoei, and it's based on a short story that he also wrote. And I believe David Show also wrote Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. And he also came up with the story for Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning. So he's definitely very familiar in the world of horror.
Yes.
And I believe he also wrote The Crow as well.
Yeah.
Actually, yes, I think he did co-write The Crow as well.
I believe so. This one stars... Oh, wait, I can't say her name. Can you?
Fairuza Balk.
Fairuza Balk, who we all know as Nancy from The Craft. Mm-hmm. Probably her best known thing and what we all remember her for, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. And also Michael Moriarty and Warren Cole as the 2 serial killers, Wheeler and Walker.
Yes, and I will say Warren Cole is really freaking hot.
I knew you were going to say that before.
My God, I had a hard time watching this movie because he's really hot, all right? Like, you know he's a serial killer, and you know it's so wrong. But I'm like, this actor's so fucking hot.
And you can understand why people would want to pick him up as well.
I'd pick him up, and if he tried to kill me, well, he wouldn't get that chance. Just saying. We'll get into some more of the performances, but yeah, it's sort of... it starts off where you see a bus full of people, and the bus breaks down, and Wheeler, the truck driver... he picks up some of the passengers, and we see Fairuza Balk decides to just hitchhike to the next hotel. And Walker, who is a hitchhiker, he comes across the broken down bus. And that's kind of when we sort of more introduced to these characters is when all the madness starts happening. Mm-hmm. So, Bede, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown of your thoughts of Pick Me Up?
I'll say this. When Masters of Horror was first announced, and they kind of pretty much put down, like... Because when they announced it, they announced all the episodes and put up a little summary of each of the plots and everything. Out of all of them, because every single one of them sounded really awesome to me, but the one that stood out to me the most was Pick Me Up. And I think what made me really excited for this episode is the concept. The idea of 2 separate serial killers. One who... is a truck driver who goes around, picks up people and kills them, and another one who's a hitchhiker who kills anyone who picks them up, and these 2 kind of clashing with each other. That is a concept that just was very intriguing for me, and I love high concept premises. And I knew, given Larry Cohen, who's a director who, if you've seen all of his previous work, he's someone who loves creating high concept premises for his films. Like, I mean, the ones like we talked about, It's Alive, Q, The Winged Serpent, The Stuff, and so many others. The plots of those are really interesting, and he always finds really fun and creative ways to make those premises work. And even though he didn't write Pick Me Up, it feels so much like his work.
Yeah.
And I have to say, out of all the episodes from the first season, Pick Me Up is definitely, I would say, the most pure fun episode.
It is actually a lot of fun, and I like how it's that concept of the hunters become the hunted for each other. So it's this weird... It's not even a role reversal, in a way. They're both hunter and prey to each other, as well as being hunters for their victim. Yeah,
and Fairuza Balk, who's kind of like... It's kind of a cat and mouse game between both Wheeler and Walker, even though their names aren't actually mentioned at all throughout the whole episode. Those are what... you know, like the names they've been given in the movie, like based on the credits, which makes sense. But I like the fact that, because in my research, the original short story that it's based on, Fairuza Balk's character isn't in the short story, and she was just added in for the episode. And I think that, to me, because I mean, I haven't read the original short story, so I can't say how it compares to the episode, but I do like the fact that you had these 2 separate serial killers who are basically going after this one woman, and she is like... And Fairuza Balk is pretty awesome in this episode, and she's a very sort of tough and resourceful character, and her kind of going like, oh shit, I've just had the worst day ever. The fact that not one but two serial killers are after me. And I like the fact that it get the dynamic between the three actors. And it works really well because I know Larry Cohen did allow his actors to do improvisation on this episode, and you can definitely tell that there is, particularly from Michael Moriarty, who I think, of the three, because I think all three are great, and they really tackled their roles superbly. But he's definitely the standout for me, and he just brings so much to that character, and he's menacing, but also charming and funny. And I mean, Michael Moriarty is one of Larry Cohen's favorite actors to work with because he has appeared in so many of his projects over the years. Yeah. And he's just great in it. But like I said, Warren Cole, he's really great as well. And I really like his character. He's like very menacing and evil, but also like Moriarty has a lot of charm to him. But I like to think all three actors just do have great chemistry with each other. Yeah. And the back and forth between the three of them is actually really good. And for me, that's what kind of makes the episode so fun. Like, it is intense and it has scary moments, but there's a fun vibe to it as well.
It is. While there are definitely a lot of scenes of horror. Yeah. And one in particular is actually very sort of dark, which takes place in a hotel room with Walker, where he's basically torturing a woman.
Yeah, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's just... Yeah, that is just ew. But then it still has this weird fun vibe about it, which is still really weird, but it works. Yep. I think he manages to kind of blend everything together really well. I did enjoy all the performances. It was weird for me, being someone that watched a lot of Law and Order. Not used to really seeing Michael Moriarty in a role like this.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas, just remembering him from that and then seeing him here, and he kind of gets over the top. The way he talks and everything, it's just really funny. Like, he's not overly menacing until he is.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost that unsuspecting kind of, like, guy.
Oh, yeah.
His character is a massive weirdo. Like, you wouldn't trust him, but you wouldn't think he's an actual killer.
Yeah.
Until you realize, he is.
Until, like, the very last minute as well.
Yeah. So that was really interesting, and Fairuza Balk is always really good. And, yeah, the character she plays, I think, works really well for her.
Yeah.
And she's very believable. And as I mentioned before, Warren Cole is, like, so hot. Like, ridiculously hot. But, again, his performance is really good. You do kind of like, you are repulsed by that character, even though I'm there thinking, oh my God, he's so hot. It's like, well, if he wants to pick me up in a non-murderous setting, sure. But yeah, I think they actually worked really well. I think sort of the supporting actors are really good, like Laurene Landon, who's one of the people on the bus.
Oh, yeah.
She spends a bit more time with Wheeler,
yeah,
and we work out that, she becomes a victim of his, and he just, like, hooks her up in the truck.
Yeah, well, also there's, like, watching this episode, there's a lot of actors in the supporting cast I've seen in other projects since this episode. Like, one in particular is Michael Eklund, who is, like, this well-known Canadian actor, but he's appeared in a lot of movies over the years. Like, I think Errors of the Human Body, where he was like the lead in, and also he was in a couple of the Soska sisters films, like See No Evil 2 as well. So he played the barman, where at the little sort of the cafe where Wheeler gets all of his orders and everything on, and he's like showing him the gun and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's Michael Eklund. Like,
like I recognized who it was.
Yeah.
I didn't know who it was. I just know I recognized him, and that scene is so weird. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing?
I know.
That was a lot with this movie. It's like, what the fuck? But it's really well done. And we always discuss, like, whether we could see it as a full-length film.
Yep.
Like, I think there is enough material to actually expand this to, say, 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think, I was going to say, like, ask you that as well. And I think this would definitely work as, say, a longer feature film. Like, you could definitely add a couple more elements, maybe a bit more of Fairuza Balk's backstory. I guess that's kind of, my main kind of flaw with the film. It's like the kind of the sense that we know that she's on the run and she's definitely had an ex-husband who's done her wrong. But we never sort of really get more of her backstory.
Yeah. See,
and I think you could easily expand upon that in a feature film.
You could easily start the film off with her escaping and then coming into, like, this horrible situation. Like, it would really work. And it definitely makes for a good companion piece with the original The Hitcher.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely a lot of homages to The Hitcher in this. And I do like the fact that also it's kind of as Wheeler mentions, it's like the reason why he and Walker are so kind of against each other. It's more like a territorial thing. Yeah. Like, he kind of owns the road, and it's like Walker's just kind of like got into his territory, and them going after the same people. Yeah. It's kind of like, I guess it's almost kind of like Freddy versus Jason in a way, how like Jason starts killing in the film, killing all the kids that Freddy wants to kill. And before Freddy can even kill anyone, Jason does it way before he does. So it's kind of that kind of dynamic.
It's Walker versus Wheeler.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way. But it definitely would. And it does give you, like, as we've mentioned, it's something different and new for that sort of hitchhiker, serial killer type of thing. Because you've got the person who picks up the hitchhikers who kills them, but also the hitchhiker who kills them. Yeah. So pretty much if you run across one or the other, you're fucked either way. Yep. And one of the characters on the bus who's hysterical and is like, what if they're a killer? Blah, 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 blah.
Well, and she was right all along.
Yeah, they're like, oh, don't be stupid. And it's like, well, no, she was actually right. Mm-hmm. I kind of liked the look of Walker, how he's got the duster jacket, the snakeskin boots, the cowboy hat.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's very contrasting to Wheeler, who's in the sort of flannel, and he does look very truckerish. Yeah. But when you're actually on his truck, because I remember I did see this, like, in the early days when the DVDs came out, but I didn't really remember it very well till I rewatched it. But you can see, like, he's got all these things in his truck. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's definitely trophies because he's totally a serial killer. Yeah. And, of course, it was. And I think that's a really interesting touch because you notice all the little bits don't match each other at all.
Yeah, they're kind of like you see rosary beads up there and then you see, like air fresheners for something.
Yeah, I think there's, like, earrings and of course, a button for a movie.
Yeah. Like, there's one that's like, I went to the horrible thing and survived. And which is funny because I think even the movie references It's Alive because Wheeler does bring up like the horrible thing is like some kind of monster baby or something like that. So which is kind of fun as well.
And of course we need to mention the ending. And as you all know, our podcast does have spoilers. So after the end fight, they all end up in an ambulance. So they're not dead. And they're still sort of fighting each other. Yep. Like, they can't really come to a truce and they're still sort of fighting. But then the EMTs are actually also serial killers who stick the syringes full of air in them, which would kill them. But then you realise on the top bunk is Fairuza Balk and she has not escaped the killers. She has new killers to deal with.
Yeah, and I love that ending. And
it's so unexpected.
It's unexpected, and also it makes kind of sense because I guess that's also kind of the urban legend of being picked up by an ambulance and finding out that a killer is driving around. Yeah. And I think even Larry Cohen may have directed a movie called The Ambulance as well. I don't know if that's kind of a weird reference to it or not, but...
I don't know. We might have to investigate that.
We'll investigate that first. And but what I mean, though, is... It's just a perfect ending to end the episode on, and...
It is actually so good.
Yeah, and it's... I think the first time I watched it, like you, I was surprised that it came out of nowhere, and actually, rewatching the episode again, I actually kind of completely forgot about the ending. Because I knew, like, it ended on a twist, but I couldn't remember exactly, like, what the twist was. So I was pleasantly surprised when... the ambulance guys came, I was like, oh yeah, it's this ending. And yeah, it just really was surprising. And for me, it actually works as well.
Yeah, I think it's actually really good because it's so unexpected. And I didn't remember that it had a twist ending. Yep. So that really took me by surprise and it was really good to watch it again. And to follow up, 1999, The Ambulance, written and directed by Larry Cohen, starring Eric Roberts and James L. Jones. So, yeah, it probably is a bit of a reference to that
Yeah,
movie.
I don't know if it's the same kind of, like, if it was a serial killer ambulance. I mean, I've never seen the ambulance, so I can't really say, but...
We might have to watch it just for curiosity's sake now.
Exactly,
Plus, it has Eric Roberts in it.
Exactly. But yeah, overall, I think... I mean, I always liked this episode, but now rewatching it, I really enjoyed it even more, especially now having seen a lot more of Larry Cohen's films since this episode.
As you said, it has that feel. Even though you didn't write it,
Yeah.
it still feels like a Larry Cohen movie.
I think this might have been actually the first thing I saw of his work. At least I think is. At least what I can remember.
Yeah.
'Cause since then, I've seen the stuff.
Yeah.
Cue the Winged Serpent, It's Alive, and a few others. I think I was more familiar with him as a writer because he wrote Phone Booth, which I loved.
Yeah, and I think he wrote or contributed to Cellular as well.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So it's interesting to see all the stuff he's done. And yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen any of his stuff, or this is the only... the stuff.
No pun intended.
Yeah, really it wasn't. Or if you've only seen this, like, definitely check out his other work, whether he's the director, writer, or both.
Yep.
He's definitely someone who's worth watching.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And now that, since he's now passed away, it's a good time to everyone to kind of go back and check out his work. Because also, I would recommend God Told Me To, because that, I think, is probably my favourite of his films. And it's a really interesting piece of work, that one.
Yeah. So what would you rate Pick Me Up?
I give it about 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it's definitely, of the episodes from the first season, for me, it's probably the most purely fun one.
I agree with you. It's 4 out of 5 from me. It was easy to give it that score. Like, it's not perfect, but it does everything so well. It's really enjoyable, and Warren Cole is really hot.
One extra points just for Warren Cole.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, what else has he been in? I might need to watch him some more. Yeah, so pretty. Oh my god. But yeah, definitely with season 1, it is such a highly recommended episode, and we both loved it.
Yep.
So definitely check it out. Bede, you can take the reins for our next one.
Alrighty, we'll move right on to episode 12 of season 1, which of course is Haeckel's Tale.
Have you heard the story of Ernst Haeckel? If I tell you my story and you still wish your beloved Samantha brought back from the dead, then I will gladly grant you your wish.
God may resurrect, man may not.
You are wrong, sir.
This girl shall live again.
I failed. The key to life after death is still beyond my reach.
The dead can live again. Who would like to have their late bereaved loved one back in their arms again?
You actually paid this Montesquino to bring back your wife's first husband from the dead.
I fear it is the only way she is satisfied. Make it stop!
Die, damn you!
It is already dead, Haeckel. You cannot kill it again. She still loves him. No other man could ever fulfill her.
What is she?
A woman in love with a dead man.
Which was directed by John McNaughton, probably best known for directing one of your all-time favorite horror films, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yeah.
And the teleplay was written by the show's creator, Mick Garris, which is based on a short story by Clive Owen. I'm sorry, not Clive Owen. Clive Barker, sorry. The author of, of the creator behind Hellraiser, Nightbreed, and so many others. And the plot summary for this one is, in the 1850s, a man on his way to his sick father in upstate New York seeks shelter in a secluded cabin owned by a mysterious couple, where he becomes involved in a grotesque orgy of the undead.
Yes. This one I hadn't seen before, so this was my first watch. So that was interesting. I wasn't really sure what to expect from it.
Yeah.
Knowing it was from John McNaughton got my interest, of course, because he directed Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and then when I found out it was based on a Clive Barker short story, that also intrigued me. So I'm like, oh, this could be really interesting. And it's got I keep saying interesting. It's got an interesting start because you see, like, it's late 19th century. A young man comes to see an old woman, and he talks about how to resurrect the dead because his wife recently died, and she's a necromancer. And then she's like, well, I'll tell you the story of Ernst Haeckel. And after that, if you still want to resurrect your wife, I'll do it. So, and then it sort of recounts the tale, which I found quite a little interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention before the cast for this episode
is of course.
Derek Cecil, John Polito, Leela Savasta, Steve Bakic, I probably butchered his last name, so forgive me, Pablo Coffey, Christopher D. Lissel, Tom McBeath, and Gerald Plunkett. Yes. And yeah, I mean, I haven't read the original short story by Clive Barker. Yeah. But what was interesting, though, about this episode, before I get into it, is that originally John McNaughton wasn't the original director of this episode. George A. Romero was. And he was going to direct it, but due to commitments with Land of the Dead that he was filming, or at least in post-production at the time, he wasn't able to fully commit to the episode. But interesting enough, so they went to Roger Corman. Because originally we talked about a couple episodes back that Roger Corman was originally going to be directing Sick Girl, but due to scheduling that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So they went back to him again to say, "Oh, would you want to direct Haeckel's Tale?" But unfortunately, he was having health problems at the time, so he couldn't do the episode. So it was given to John McNaughton. Now, John McNaughton hasn't really directed that many horror films. I think he's only ever directed 2. Of course, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, being one, and then another one that I can't think of the title of it, but it came out a few years ago, and it had Michael Shannon and Samantha Morton in it.
I'm trying to think of what it is.
I think it was The Harvest. I think that's what it's called, The Harvest. I could be wrong, so... But of course, he's made other films like Mad Dog and Glory, Wild Things, so he's definitely had quite a varied career.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it was The Harvest.
Oh, yeah, so that was like I think his first horror film since Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. But even then, like... And I know with Masters of Horror, they wanted to kind of go with filmmakers that kind of had an established horror career, but they did make exceptions for certain directors who made a classic horror film if that was the only horror film they made. So having McNaughton direct this episode just based on Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer makes total sense because that movie is an absolute classic of the genre.
Yeah.
But for me personally, like my overall thoughts of the episode, even then, and as I do now, having rewatched it, I've always been kind of mixed on this episode, and I kept trying to figure out why that is. And I think the conclusion I've come to now, especially after watching it again just yesterday, is that it's a very disjointed episode. Like, it feels like 2 completely different story, like 2 halves that are kind of smashed together. Because you got this first half where it's basically Ernest Haeckel kind of being like who's at the university that he's at, kind of telling people that he has the ability to awaken the dead or bring the dead back to life, especially to kind of prove he's more kind of religious teachers and students wrong, because in the film he's a staunch atheist who doesn't believe in the afterlife, but he thinks he has a little bit of a god complex because he wants to bring the dead back to life. And the reason why that is that he, and which I think is a cool little touch, is that he has heard stories out of Europe about a scientist by the name of Victor Frankenstein doing it, which, so the story of Haeckel's Tale set in the same world as the original Frankenstein tale. And so you got this first half of him trying to resurrect a body, doesn't work out, and then of course once he gets the letter that his father is ill, he goes off, and that's when he meets the couple in the woods. So like it does feel like 2 separate stories that could easily have been expanded upon whole
because
episode.
You sort of because you're dealing with like I guess he's a medical student.
Yeah, medical student. Yeah.
And he wants to follow in the footsteps of Victor Frankenstein, who, I mean, he gets told, no, that's just stories, whatever.
Yeah.
And he's doing it in kind of the same way that like Victor Frankenstein was doing it. And when he tried to show everyone, like, the body looks like it opens its eyes, but then it catches fire.
Yeah.
But then they sort of bring in that more sort of magic element with a necromancer. So there's Montesquino.
Yeah, played by John Polito.
I thought he was pretty good. I liked him in this role. So he goes to see his show and sees him bring back a dead dog.
Yeah.
And so that sort of plays a part. And it's really weird because it's quite the opposite of bringing someone back in the Victor Frankenstein way.
Yeah.
Then bringing someone back in sort of the more necromancer
sort
way.
of like magic and stuff like that.
So I think someone who helps him get the bodies tells him about the necromancer.
Yeah.
And says, no, this is real. So then when he does come across like... So you're like, okay, so he's going to work out this necromancer thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it sort of doesn't really come up. He's just going to see his ill father. And that's when he comes across the weird old man, young woman couple.
Yeah.
And you're kind of wondering, where the fuck is this going?
Yeah, because like he's really old and she's quite young
Yeah.
and beautiful. And it's like, okay, what is the deal with this couple? And like John Polito does come back in the second half of the story and you find out he's kind of the instigator for everything that happens in the second half. But like, and I guess they put it, well, he's kind of like the through line between both sections. But I mean, if he wasn't there, it would feel like two separate kind of stories.
Yeah.
But I do like stories where it's about a character who sees a world in a certain way, thinks this is how it works, but then they get challenged on that. And I always find those kind of stories very interesting, especially with a character like Haeckel, who is a scientist. He doesn't believe in magic and all that stuff. But then once he's thrown in this situation, it really kind of warps his view and makes him realize that he was looking at this the wrong way. Like, that stuff kind of, for me, was the most interesting aspect of the episode. But yeah, it feels like an episode that could have been expanded upon, because there are some questions I still have.
Yeah, I felt like there was a bit of wasted time. Like, you didn't need repeated scenes of Haeckel walking.
Yeah.
That was just, for me, that was like wasted time.
Yeah.
It does kind of pick up a little bit because this couple does seem really weird.
Yeah.
And I was sort of wondering at first, like, maybe the old man was a necromancer and maybe he had gotten old because he'd been necromancing and that had taken years off his life.
Yeah.
But that wasn't it at all.
Oh, no. Definitely not.
And then it just takes this whole weird turn where the wife character is still mourning the death of her husband. And I guess every so often she goes to the graveyard and his dead body comes to life.
And basically, to use lack of a better word, they fuck the shit out of each other.
Yeah. So she's basically having sex with the resurrected corpse of her husband while all the other resurrected corpses watch.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I guess, the main question I had. Like, I can get, Montesquino bringing her first husband back to life, but where are these other bodies? Are they like... It's never explained,
know.
like, who... Like, why are they resurrected? Like, it's never... I mean, I guess to kind of show, like, what happens to the episode, because when you get towards the end of the episode and the old lady tells her tale, you find out that the old lady is actually the young wife. And that she was taught necromancy by Montesquino.
Yeah.
And... Which kind of, I guess, makes sense. Maybe they were doing it as the practice on all these other bodies, but again, it's never really fully explained.
I guess I sort of assumed that maybe in order to resurrect the dead husband, like with the spells he does, it just ended up resurrecting everyone else.
And I
don't know. Yeah,
it just shows that zombies are perverts. They just want to like watching people have sex.
It is really just, it's like, oh, this is so gross.
They're all Denny's, Marcy. They're all Denny's. They like to watch you guys.
Yeah, it's so gross because you're seeing her like fuck a reanimated corpse, and then you find out that she's obviously been doing this for some time. Her husband wants her needs satisfied, and she had a zombie baby with him, and it remains a zombie because when she's an old lady, she still has the baby. And it's gross.
It's like the grossest zombie baby since the one from Brain Dead.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, it's weird, and of course, Haeckel ends up dying and gets resurrected, and
not only that, her old husband and also Montesino get turned into zombies as well. So.
And then she starts having sex with Haeckel as a zombie. She doesn't like having sex with living people.
I mean, no judgments here. I mean,
but you sort of find out like she's the young woman at the end after she concludes her tale. And then, all the zombies come out with the baby, and the guy's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
And I think it also insinuates, like, you guys behave, or we won't play. And it's like, oh no, it's like a zombie gangbang. It's ugh.
It's the orgy of the dead.
Yes.
It is very messed up.
Yeah.
Things that worked, like I thought it was really well shot. It was a good. The visuals were good. The special effects are pretty good.
Yeah.
The
makeup and
it does feel like it's set in the 19th century.
Yeah.
So I think that stuff really worked. I didn't mind Derek Cecil as Haeckel.
I thought he was solid as well.
Yeah, he was pretty good. I thought John Polito was really good as Montesino.
Yep.
I thought Leela Savasta as Elise, the young wife, wasn't bad. And Tom McBeath was pretty decent. Like, all the performances were pretty decent.
Yeah.
I think it just kind of fails. It doesn't answer everything.
Yeah.
It sort of leaves you a bit confused. I did like that it's kind of Clive Barker does Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Which was good. I just think probably could have been a bit better. And look, this is something you probably could actually extend to a full-length movie, but you would need to make some changes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You really would need to. There's nothing wrong with kind of having the flashback thing, but I think it'd be more interesting having flashbacks, then go to the present, then flashback again, to kind of have, like, Haeckel's story weave into the guy being told the story.
Yeah.
To see similarities. Like, something like that I think would work pretty well. But, it is an interesting one. It's not the best one.
Yeah.
The ending is truly fucked up, so I give them points for how fucked up it actually was.
Yeah.
But, it's probably sits around the middle for me. It's not the worst Masters of Horror episode, but it's not the best either.
Yeah, I could agree with that,
ratings from
I'd probably give it about 2.5. Like I said, I've always even been mixed on this episode, even when I first watched it, and watching it, it's even more apparent to me now. So, like, it is watchable, but I think it's one that I think could have been developed a lot more.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the pacing could have been tightened a little bit too.
Yeah, I think John McNaughton did a pretty decent job at directing it, though. So, I think it probably lies more within the script or how it was adapted. But again, I haven't read the short story, so I'd probably have to read it. But I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
Maybe I liked it a little bit better than you.
Yeah.
But not by much.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, I think that wraps us up on episode 6, I believe.
I believe this episode 6.
Should be 6, yes. Because that is a whole 12 episodes with 2 episodes a podcast. So, 6.
But,
yes.
But for the next one, of course, we'll be talking about Takashi Miike's Imprint, which was the season finale of the first season of Masters of Horror. But we'll have a lot to discuss with that, because not just because of the episode itself, but also the behind the scenes trouble of that episode as well, which we will get into.
And it was also banned and controversial.
Well, that was kind of the main one, that it was at least banned in the US, but not in Australia, because they did show it here.
Somehow it got shown here
without
being cut. So there you go. We'll have more to discuss there.
Yep.
So,
and of course, the other one we'll talk for that episode is the first episode of season 2, which is we're talking about Toby Hooper once again with his episode The Damned Thing.
Yeah, so I have seen a couple from season 2, but not many, so it'll be interesting to go through all of that when we get there, starting from the next episode.
Yep.
And that will probably be coming to you in a few weeks, so yeah, after this, keep an eye out. And until then, there should be another The King Zone episode.
Mm-hmm.
There is one that we just released not long ago, which is about the 3 Netflix original films.
Yep.
So definitely check that one out.
Yep.
And I'll let everyone know where they can find us online. So, of course, supermarcey.com. You can follow our Twitter account at twitter.com/SM_supernetwork. My Twitter handle for me personally is twitter.com/supermarcey, and Bedes is twitter.com/BedeJermyn.
Yep.
You can go to Facebook and type in facebook.com/the Super Network. Takes us to our Facebook page. You can join us at the Super Network Facebook group, so you just look up the Super Network group. You can email us at thesupernetworksm@gmail.com. You can subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, and Spotify. And with all the recent bushfires in Australia, you can help us out by going on Facebook and liking creators for bushfire relief, as there's some stuff for sale with donations going to bushfire relief. Or you can pre-order the Australian Burns anthology book, and that address is australiaburns.bigcartel.com.
And also don't forget to leave us a review and rating over on iTunes as well for the podcast. So that way it gives our podcast more exposure.
Yes, and any other links or places I forgot to mention?
You can also find my column, Horror Down Under, over at thescreencast.com. And also you can check out my personal writers/fan page on Facebook, which is facebook.com/terribleaussie. And that's pretty much it, really. So
yeah, that is a wrap. So until next time, I've been Super, Bede's been terrible. Catch you later.
See you, everyone.